We are continuing with this theme, is theme 1, which focuses on research designs, methods, and techniques. And I think last week we on Thursday, we moved and we stopped when we just started to look at the research methods. I remember we even moved to the slide that we see now, because I could count up to 10. And if you don't mind, I propose that we move from here. We are continuing with our discussion, and this is still generic about research methods. And we just have looked at the stages that must be followed when we plan. And these stages must be planned in such a way so as to maximize the validity of the research findings. In research, there is a problem with personal prejudices and bias. So the stages are there, and the research process is structured in a way that bias and personal prejudices is actually avoided. In natural sciences in particular, they believe that one way in which you can manage prejudice and bias is that you detach, the researcher must detach himself from this research process to ensure objectivity. But this is not so in terms of the people that use social research methods, particularly the qualitative paradigm. But it is important that everybody agrees, all researchers do agree that we must ensure objectivity, to ensure that there is validity. The information that we will collect, the processing of the data, the final report that we present is validated, so we can ensure validity. There are other challenges, and you will later on see as we zoom into specific data collection methods and tools. There are other challenges in the preparation of the tools with which we collect data, and poor construction of those instruments also do results into biasness, and it can also lead to personal prejudices. And these include vague research questions and measurement techniques that are biased, including the sampling design that is biased. So we are required in terms of the research methods to comply with the correct processes in terms of the research projects that we will implement. That will assist us to avoid bias and will ensure objectivity, and that we collect valid data. And one challenge that we have is that in research, particularly if you look at people that are starting to do research for the first time, they are the ones who come across all these challenges of being biased and collecting data that is not validated. That is why in research it is emphasized that people that collect data, say for instance, through interviews, need to be trained. And so they must be able to avoid the questions that are leading, and ensure that what they ask, they don't force, in other words, the respondents to answer in a specific way that satisfies them. Because we don't want data that agrees with our feelings. We want data that is objective, whether it agrees with us, whether it disagrees with us. The important aspect is that this data is valid. So we shall have complied with all the scientific requirements. Now, it is important to ensure that we reach the correct goal of gaining an understanding of the society, and we do this by ensuring that we follow correct methodologies and processes. And I emphasize this statement because I know that we will be confronted with such challenges as we continue to conduct research, particularly when we go to the field and we, during the process of collecting data, engaging with the sources where data is collected, as well as when we interpret data. We want to ensure that the reports that we present contain data that is validated and that is acceptable. And therefore, this brings us to asking a question. Then what are then those research approaches and methods, techniques that we need to use to ensure that what we collect is valid? In other words, to ensure the goal of valid knowledge. So we need to ensure that we choose correct techniques and correct methods. There is a lot of them, and today I've tried to revise this presentation, and I made a summary of some of these methods. You will see them in other slides, and I tried to zoom into one of the research methods. And if we finish that one, we can even go do an introduction into the second one. But you will see that there's an array of methods and there's an array of tools that assist us to collect data as scientists. And these would assist that indeed we reach that goal of valid knowledge. Therefore, we will see now that we will choose research methods together with their associated research techniques. And for an example, we will, if we are using the qualitative paradigm, even the research methods, the techniques, and all the data collection instruments must also be in line with each other. Here where we are continuing to talk about research methods. And the slides on which we are is just to inform us that we look mainly at two broad research paradigms, which is quantitative and qualitative. And here, an example presented here is that participant observation will belong to qualitative studies than quantitative. And if we talk about control and experimental groups, this is what would belong to quantitative. But now this slide indicates to us that while we are presented with the two types of paradigm, it is upon the researcher himself or herself to choose the correct design, whether qualitative or quantitative, because that should suit the purpose for which research is conducted and the objectives that the researcher wishes to achieve. In other words, different studies use different methods, and the method appropriate for the task at hand should be used. The researcher not only selects the methods and techniques, and I cannot read this. There's a bar that is. Can you finish that one for me, please? The researcher not only selects the method and techniques,
but also the methodological paradigm, quantitative, yes, qualitative, or a combination of both.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, let me just emphasize here that although we have got these two paradigms, and we might have mentioned it again on Thursday, sometimes researchers would prefer either of the two. But there is also an understanding that the combining the two, where we use mixed methods, we benefit more than if we are using either of the two, because each one of them has got strength And although they've got advantages and disadvantages, but if you use the two of them in combination, you benefit from the strength of the two. No, so here, qualitative research predominantly seeks to explain its aims is in-depth description. That is why in qualitative research, most of the techniques and the data collection methods here have to do with engagement. You will see later on, we will look at some of the methodologies such as participant observation and focus groups. These are strategies and these are methods through which you engage with the participants and the people from who, or the informants, people that you are collecting data from. Now, but quantitative research measures what is assumed to be a static reality in the hopes of developing generalization. And this is because they depart from different theoretical assumptions. There's what we call deductive and inductive. And in deductive theories, you have got principles that are set there, which are there to which the process has to conform to. In other words, principles are there in research that you must follow. But in inductive theories, you generate theory from the process itself. In other words, the process of research is a process of building a theory, and theory should emerge and is built through the process of collecting and interpreting data. In most cases, social researchers have a preference to work within one of these traditions. We have already said this, that they either use quantitative or qualitative research methods, and that multi-method approaches, which we call triangulation, is something that is now being emphasized, noting that we benefit more by using that one. We should recognize and acknowledge that both approaches have positive attributes, and that combining different methods can result in gaining the best of both the results. I've already said this earlier on. Next slide, please. But another important aspect is that although we are saying we can use a combination of these methods, then we must also accept that we must understand both the two methodologies. In my experience, I noted that if you use one methodology or one paradigm, you can master that one. Then you understand it better than the other. But the use of two approaches, the two paradigms, would require a lot of work, because you cannot, a person who is jack of all trades, in other words, cannot be a specialist in everything. But if you were to focus only on qualitative, then you become a specialist on qualitative approaches. And I think my strength is mainly on qualitative. I know that at some instances I did conduct survey. That was in the first research project, and that in that I did combine qualitative and quantitative questions in my survey instruments. And later on, we will see when we talk about the development of the survey questionnaire, how it is constructed, how we can mix the two approaches in through that instrument. But quantitative techniques are concerned with how research participants are randomly selected from the study population in an unbiased manner. The standardized questionnaire or intervention they receive and the statistical methods used to test predetermined hypotheses regarding the relationships between independent and dependent variables. That is how the quantitative approach is implemented. This is different from qualitative. We have already said that in qualitative, there's much more engagement with the participants, research participants. And that is why now as we start talking about the quantitative methods, is that in quantitative research, the researcher is considered external to subjects and independent, and the results are expected to be replicable no matter who conducts the research. That is where we said in quantitative research, a researcher should detach himself or herself from the process itself. Not a lot of engagement. But the strengths of quantitative research paradigm are that its methods produce quantifiable and reliable data that is usually generic to the target population. That is why with quantitative data, you can use statistical analysis, and they say here that the data is actually reliable. That is where you can count things, you can measure things, but in qualitative data, you don't measure, you don't count. And quantitative measures are often most appropriate for conducting needs assessment of the evaluation or for evaluating comparison outcomes. This is just an example of where you can use a quantitative paradigm. This paradigm, here is the challenge. Now, we said that each paradigm has got strong points, but it also has weaknesses. Now, here we're looking at the weaknesses of using quantitative methods. This paradigm fails when the phenomenon under study is difficult to measure or quantify. That is why, in their belief, people that are using quantitative methods feel that everything must be measurable and it must be quantifiable. And something that cannot be measured does not have place in research. That is how they believe it. Now, the other weakness is that it tends to decontextualize human behavior in a way that it removes the event from its real world setting and ignores the effects of variables that have not been included in. That is where we said in quantitative approaches, a human being detaches himself. The feelings of the people are not very important. The attitudes of the people are not very important. The behavior of the people are not very important. The important aspects is to measure the variable that one is investigating. But this is why we say this approach is different from qualitative, because in qualitative, there is no decontextualization, because a person is very imbued. A person is there with the people, he acknowledges the feelings and the behavior and the attitude of the people. It is the difference between the two. Therefore, in terms of quantitative methods, this is seen as one of its weaknesses. Can we come to the next slides, please? And in terms of qualitative research, the research paradigm provides the researcher with the perspective of the target audience members through immersion in a culture or situation, as well as direct interaction with the people under study. That is why some of the techniques, such as participants observation, a researcher would go and stay there with the people. He experiences what they experience. He will sleep there, he will eat there, he will actually behave, try to mingle with the people there. And this is different from quantitative research methods. So this one offers an opportunity for engagement and for studying the culture while you are inside, studying the participants while you are inside. And also in the focus group, if we are lucky, we will be able to see that there is a lot of engagement, because you facilitate, you speak, you ensure that data that you're collecting is actually relevant to the research topic that you are investigating. Qualitative research methods used in social research include observation, in-depth interviews, focus groups, and analysis of personal documents. This apart from analysis of personal documents, a number of these methods require you to engage with your participants, to engage with the people who are participating in the research. These methods are designed to help researchers understand.
These methods are designed to help researchers understand the meanings people assign to social phenomena and to elucidate the mental processes underlying behaviors.
Yes, beautiful, very good. There is one statement that I want to make here, in addition to what has been read here. You see, apart from us, actually, let me say that the impact of us understanding the social processes, social phenomenon on which we are researching, and that engagement with the respondents is educational in nature. When I conducted my first research, I was very happy because you could learn from the people who you are talking to. You could understand that you don't understand the subject. You might have read the theory and all the books and all the background, but you don't, the way what people tell you, most of it comes as new knowledge to you. And this is what I think is more educational. Then you start to understand, oh, the phenomenon that I'm researching is like this. Oh, I thought it ends here, as the book says, but you will see that it goes beyond. And in that, you start developing better insight of what you are researching. And when you go to do data analysis, this one helps you better than if you would have done mailed questionnaires. Particularly, I'm talking here when you have got face-to-face, you are using face-to-face approach, and you are talking to people and you are engaging with them. There you learn a lot. A person who is collecting data face-to-face is different from a person who is collecting data through mailed questionnaires, because there you don't probe, you don't see a person. You don't see a person who is responding. You don't even see if a person is happy. You don't see the body language. You don't hear a person talking. You only see what a person writes, and you would only interpret what they've written. But if you're there seeing them, seeing the body language, the way they are, and making follow-ups and probing on questions is something that would enrich data collection, something that also develops you as a person. And again, this depends on the type of a person that you are, because people that like engaging with, that are highly social, are the ones who would like strategies that allow them to engage with the sources of data, to engage with people and to engage with the respondents. But the people that don't like a lot of engagement with people, who are less noisy, would like to collect data by just sending mailed questionnaires so that people can respond to them. Therefore, they also collect very little. The advantage of using qualitative methods is that they generate detailed and rich data that leave the participants' perspective intact while providing a context for understanding behavior. That is all that I was saying. You see, you would just, the respondent would be in his natural status. You would see him as he should be, and you would experience that, which is what we said. It would enrich data and it will also develop you. The focus upon processes and reasons why differs from that of quantitative research, with which addresses correlations between variables and explanations. Remember, in qualitative research, you are answering questions of how, why, and therefore there is in-depth description. It's not just a mentioning of a statement. You're not asking how many donkeys were there. 4. How many donkeys were not drinking water? 2. That is quantitative. But in qualitative approach, we would ask you, how did the donkeys stand when they were drinking water? Then it's open-ended. Someone would tell you they were drinking water while they were shaking their tails, or they were. Although the conceptual boundary that differentiates qualitative and quantitative research has become blurred, it would be useful to describe the main tenets of each shortly. For example, the methodological paradigm chosen, either the quantitative or the qualitative research approach, reflects not only those methods and techniques which are to be used in the project. Now here I think they are saying sometimes it would be difficult to make a distinction whether you're doing qualitative or quantitative. This is where I said in a questionnaire, you could include questions that are open-ended that belong to qualitative paradigm, and those that are closed, which are just to mention, which are closed questions that belong to quantitative. So there is a sort of mixing, and that is where we talk about triangulation. The quantitative approach is closely associated with the natural sciences. A number of research designs within the quantitative paradigm include the social survey, experimental designs, analysis of previously collected data, and quantitative content analysis. These are the designs that are included under quantitative research approach. Next slide. To develop a proper understanding of this methodological paradigm, a closer look at the notion of positivism is required. And positivism entails the belief that the methods and procedures of the natural sciences are inappropriate to social sciences. Despite the fact that humans attach meaning to life, feel, hate, think, and otherwise behave differently compared to the objects of the natural science, the positivist makes the assumption that it is nonetheless appropriate to apply them in social sciences. And there's another paradigm that negates this, that these methodologies or these approaches are not suitable in social methods, in social research. Again, positivism entails a belief that these phenomena that cannot be observed directly or measured indirectly, such as feelings or subjective experiences, have no place in scientific knowledge. That is why quantitative approach requires things that can be measured. And yes, they must be counted. According to the positivist position, scientific endeavor exhibits both deductive and inductive qualities. The inductive quality of science implies the existence of a scientific field composed of verified empirical facts, and that is where we've got theories that are standing and that have got principles that have to be complied with when research is conducted. Thus, after certain facts have been verified through an empirical testing process, they are fed into an existing body of knowledge, and this is what we refer to as theories. Next slide, please. Furthermore, science is regarded as deductive since hypotheses which are due for testing are derived from an existing body of theory. I've already indicated that. Last, positivism entails a particular approach to values. In the first instance, scientists should be purged, and here I write clear that they must divorce the values. They must not have values. You see, their research processes and activities must not be value imbued. In other words, they must not tamper with anything that has to do with the object under investigation. And we've said that earlier on, because we said that which they don't like, it is what the qualitative research agrees with. In the second instance, positivists draw a sharp distinction between scientific issues and normative statements. It is believed that normative statements cannot be empirical. I cannot read that one. Can someone read that one for me, please, again?
It cannot be empirically verified and should not be the focus of scientific study.
Yes. At this point of discussion, two qualities of the quantitative approach as exhibited by the notion of positivism seem to be worth noting. Firstly, phenomena must be observable, otherwise they have no place in science. We've repeatedly said this. Secondly, these phenomena which are derived from a hypothesis must be measurable. Something must be observable and something must be measurable so that it can have place in science. Yeah, now this is, we are approaching slides that I'm going to skip. And the slides that are following now, they are going to present to us designs and which belong to a quantitative paradigm of research. And I don't want to put a lot of emphasis on them because in my research, I did not see them coming in as something that we use, but they are important for background. And let me encourage that if people are interested on them, they go and read. Because what I would do if it was me, I was going to read them generally to have a general understanding and background. But I would zoom and specifically look into one that I will use. If I think in my research process, I will use an experimental design, then I would focus on that one and concentrate my literature on that one and read more, because it is what I'm going to unpack when I present my research methodology during the preparation of a proposal. We have just finished the quantitative research paradigm. It might be that at the towards the end of this presentation, and if we are still having time, at the end of this session, we might go back and look at at some of the designs, and mainly those that I think are commonly used. Because at the end of this session, I will look at methods that are commonly used and focus on them, with the hope that researchers who are part of this session would be able to choose of them, or they've already chosen some of them and they're using them. And it will give them an opportunity to engage with those and with me, and we can pick each one of them and run with them. And if they feel that we should not go through a lot of them, then we can only identify a few and deal with those. And by the way, I also want to propose that I pause a little bit and see if people are comfortable with what we've been discussing the quantitative paradigm, because we want to start now looking at the qualitative paradigm. Are we happy with what was presented? Does anybody want to make inputs? Does anybody want to make comment? Lindy, we're at the end of the session. I will go very practical because I will show you some of the methods that I've used, and you would see how I've structured the interview, how I've structured the process, and you would see the specific outcomes after I've used a specific research method and under this specific paradigm. We are starting now with the qualitative research approach. I wish we have more time to look at an example of common methods. Contrary to research approach of quantitative researchers, qualitative researchers believe that data can only effectively be interpreted when the researcher maintains an intimate relationship with the object of the study and comes as close as possible to it. This we have already said. Qualitative research refers to an approach in which the study of the world seeks to describe and analyze the behavior of humans. We have said this, that is where there's an in-depth description, and people are not detached from the research participants and from the processes, from the subjects of studies. Rather than observe the behavior of an object during experimental research, thus attempting to control all nuisance factors and variables that might distort the validity of your research findings, the qualitative researcher seeks to become immersed with the object of the study. That is what we've been preaching all along. A number of different assumptions about the social world guide the qualitative researcher. These assumptions are formed by a number of intellectual positions, including phenomenology, symbolic interactionism, and naturalism. And phenomenology says the study of the social sciences views the subject matter of the social sciences, people and their behavior, as different from the subject matter.
The subject matter would be viewed as different from the subject matter of natural sciences.
Yes, it is because they know that the people that believe on phenomenology, who depart from the phenomenological assumptions. They know that animals cannot speak. They know that plants, water, air, soil do not speak. And that nobody knows whether soil has got feelings, plants have got feelings, animals, we do know that they've got feelings. But human beings think differently from the natural environment. Human beings have got behavior, they've got perceptions, and they behave differently from the social world. So they see that now these researchers who believe on this assumption, they see that human beings should therefore be studied differently. Approaches to studying human beings should differ from approaches in which we study animals. That is why they believe that there is a say that quantitative approach have borrowed from natural sciences. And the qualitative approaches are more inclined towards human beings, where social beings are studied. Any attempt to understand social reality must be grounded in people's understanding and experiences of that reality. Therefore, if you detach yourself, like it should happen in terms of a quantitative approach, if you detach yourself, you are likely not to understand and not to experience the real world in which subjects, people that you are studying, find themselves. Therefore, your understanding of the subject matter is going to be poor. Thus, an attempt is made to understand things from the subject's point of view. The person being studied, you must understand from the view of the people that you are studying. You cannot detach yourself, you cannot be independent. Otherwise, you're going to interpret it wrongly. That is why it is important to also understand that people have got feelings, and that feelings do impact in the way that people respond to you. And they are impacted by your study. As we come to ethics, you will see all this one. Next slide again. Qualitative research displays a number of characteristics. Firstly, qualitative research is committed to viewing events, norms, and values from the perspective of the people who are being studied. It's a repetition of what we've said already. Secondly, such researchers provide detailed descriptions of the social settings they investigate. We said here it's about explanations, it's about descriptions. That is why we've got in-depth interviews, we've got participant observations where we are immersed in there as the students, as the researchers, we are there where the information is needed to be collected. This enables them to understand the subject's interpretation of what is going on. Therefore, we interpret correctly, not falsely say that people are saying, say that there is no water when water is there. No, we will be interpreting it correctly because we understand their feelings, we understand the position from which they depart and the perspectives from which they respond. Qualitative research follows a strategy that is relatively open and unstructured. Even when interview schedules are used as a research technique, the researcher provides minimal guidance to interviews and allows considerable latitude when responding to questions. You know, when you formulate questions and you are in a qualitative paradigm, you open. When you ask a person who is hungry, a person you can ask a person to qualify, or you ask questions in a way that a person is not limited. A question does not limit a person in the response. You formulate questions that allow people to expand and express themselves so that they give you full information. They will describe, they will explain, they will give you deep information. So you don't limit a participant's interviewee through the types of questions. And we'll see that this when we discuss about designing questionnaire or interview guides. When the interviewee moves away from the researcher's designated area, the advantage arises that data are provided that are central to the interviewee. Data, the information that they give you is not only data that is helping you, and it is not only reflecting the perspective of the researcher, it also mainly reflects the perspectives of the research participant, the interviewee, a person who is providing the information. In other words, you don't even compromise the integrity of the research participant.
When applying the survey questionnaire, a technique followed by quantitative researchers regard such drifting as a tiresome distraction.
Yeah, this is the people, they're talking about the people who are against, who don't like qualitative paradigm, that they feel that it is tiring to listen to a lot of things, to collect too much data. They just want, do you eat cat? No. Do you eat a donkey? No. Do you eat a goat? Yes. They just want that. Those are quantitatives. But we, who are qualitative researchers, would want you, tell me why you don't eat a donkey. Because it smells, it is ugly, or it's one like that. Then we give you deeper meanings that comes from us and a lot of explanations deeply. Can we go to the next slide, please? Oh, yes, it says, you see, in some cases, in particular, the way the qualitative researcher approaches his research process and his respondents, he merely provides, the attitude of a qualitative researcher is that they provide guidance to the respondents. They don't dictate how they need to respond. They will formulate questions and leave them open. This is what they mean here. They say some qualitative researchers do not even have an identifiable problem that they seek to investigate at the outset of their investigation. They find a problem there when they are in the field. They will design their research project as such, noting that they will guide research participants towards identifying what problem they have in their area, and that is where a decision will be taken if that is researchable, and a structure will be produced to ensure that research actually conforms to what the participants need. This open approach allows social scientists access to unexpectedly it allows social scientists access to unexpectedly identify important topics which may not have been visible to them had they followed a rigid and structured. You see, if you go to an area and you're conducting research, you will use assumptions. You would you can use your hypothesis that you suppose that in that area people are not satisfied by the services that government is giving them. That is when you presume and you structure your research topic along that. Assessing the satisfaction or the dissatisfaction of the Tswane community to the services provided by government. You were assuming, you were thinking that they've got a problem. And it might be that when you go there, you find that it is not true. Your hypothesis might be proved wrong when you have conducted research. You see? So we are saying the qualitative approach would even allow you to identify problems that would not have been identified from the beginning. Finally, qualitative researchers often reject the formulation of theories and the concepts at the beginning of their fieldwork. But this is what the quantitative researchers do, because they use a deductive approach. Here, the qualitative researcher mainly use an inductive approach in which theory is built through the collection of data. Concepts are developed and they're built through the collection of data, not at the beginning of the fieldwork, at the end when you have done research work. So there is no dictation that these are the principles, this is the theory on which we believe everything that you collect should comply with this. But we use processes such as the ground theory, building the theory from the ground level and coming up with a theory and concepts at the end of the process or at the end of the studies. These researchers prefer to formulate and test theories and concepts in tandem with the data collection process. I've already said that. The research strategy is thus not to impose an alien theoretical framework on the subject of the study, but to develop a theory while you are collecting data and while you are conducting research. Therefore, you don't impose anything to the study environment. And now here, what we have are those designs that belong to qualitative paradigm. And again, we will skip this because we want to run to common research methods and have a feel of those and see if we cannot benefit from the session by looking at them today. I think we need to move. Yeah, let's skip them. Let's skip them. Let's skip them. We want to go to common methodologies. Let's skip them. Anybody can read them, can study them. I have skipped the designs that belong to quantitative methods and to qualitative methods. But here, it's a combination of everything, because here I'm going to look at common research methods. Now, when we finish looking at this, we will have an opportunity towards the end of the session to zoom into some of them specifically and look as if we were going to use them to conduct research, to do a research proposal. Let me just briefly go through this, and later on we will see how we move forward. These are the common research methods. I'm not going to read at their key features. If you are interested in this, you can read at your own comfort, but later on I will bring some of them back, then we can look at them, we can zoom at them. We've got sample survey. This is a quantitative approach, rapid appraisal, qualitative, participant observation, qualitative. Let's go down. Next slide. Case study, quantitative, participatory learning and action, or participant action research is that is qualitative. And specialized methods is photographic records and videos, quantitative. There I've put the source here. Now I want to talk about, I don't know if I must talk about triangulation now, or we must first zoom into them. Maybe I can just rush quickly through triangulation. To enhance the efficiency of their work, we have said in one of the slides that if you use both qualitative and the quantitative paradigm, you are using mixed methods. And the terminology that they use here is triangulation. To enhance the efficiency of their work, researchers collect, present, and analyze both qualitative and quantitative data. And that is where I said, if you have got a questionnaire, you can include quantitative questions, you can include qualitative questions. Now you are mixing methods. Many of the most interesting discoveries occur when findings based on one type of data seem to contradict findings based on the other. But you might find that in most cases, the findings from both the two paradigms complement each other. Mixed method research involves the planned use of two or more methods or data collection and analysis. The term is used to refer to designs that combine elements of both quantitative and qualitative approaches. And I've said for an example that when you do a questionnaire, you can combine the elements of the two. Many researchers now routinely use a variety of methods because applied research has come to accept the legitimacy of various methodological transitions. Therefore, they are not leaning on either of the two, or they are not leaning on quantitative or on qualitative approach. They are actually using both the two. Next. The most common examples of combination are with the methods of data collection. It is also possible to combine conceptual frameworks, hypotheses, methods of data analysis, or frameworks for the interpretation of research findings. There are no uniquely mixed methods data collection methods. Instead, what characterizes mixed methods designs is the integration of elements from both qualitative and quantitative approaches. Next slide, please. I'm rushing so that we can go to zoom into one of them. Next slide. Take note that methodological strategies are tools for inquiry and that methods are cohesive collections of strategies that fit a particular perspective. They're just explaining what methodological strategies are. To incorporate a different strategy into a study is risky and should be done with care, lest the core assumptions of the project be violated. Maintaining a balance between respecting these assumptions and respecting the assumptions underlying your strategy. I cannot finish that one, but let's go to the next slide. Rationale for triangulation is that one of the main reasons for using mixed methods designs is to combine the strength of qualitative and quantitative designs, while at the same time addressing some of the inefficiencies or inherent weaknesses of each mono-method approach. Mixed methods can be applied at any stage of the design, implementation, or analysis of a research project. Next slide. These are the practical hints on triangulation, mixed methods. Quantitative research methods can be used to collect data that may be analyzed in numerical form. Yeah, that one we agree. They pose the question, who, what, when, where, how much, how many, and how often. Things are either counted, measured, or set questionnaire is used, or a set of questionnaire is used. This is when you do quantitative. Answers can be coded and statistically analyzed, but qualitative research methods provide greater flexibility and pose. But qualitative methods also can make analysis and synthesis more difficult. We are here, and I wish we finished the remaining slides, because they will touch the practical way of doing research. And I want to do an example of what I've done with the hope that it will benefit researchers who are participating here. Now, we move forward. It should be clear by now that there are many ways to get information for the purposes of research. And we've been talking about the different paradigms, and we even touched on the methods. The most common research methods are, now here, this is what when you prepare a proposal, this is what you have to handle and what you're going to deal with, and to decide on what to use. But the most common ones are literature searches. This has to be done by everybody. Talking with people, optional. Focus group, optional. Personal interview, telephone surveys, mail survey, email surveys, and internet surveys. You have to choose amongst these, but literature is a must for everyone. Now let's go to a summary of each of these in the next slide. Literature review involves reviewing all readily available materials. And this will be able to tell you what other researchers are saying, what other authors are saying about the topic under investigation. These materials can include internal company information, relevant trade publications, newspapers, magazines, annual reports, company literature, online database, and any other published materials. This is what we do this is what we look at when we are doing a literature search. It is a very inexpensive method of gathering information, although it often does not yield timely information. Now, literature searches over the web are the fastest, while when you go to library, because you go physically, you visit there, you go and sit, it takes your time. It will take more time. Here they say 8 weeks and so on. So it means there's considerable time that must be invested if you have to go physically to the library than doing it literature search on the internet. One way of gathering information is to talk to people. And this is a good way of getting information during the initial stages of a research project, because there you can speak to those people that know much. You've got customers, you've got suppliers, you've got specialists. You can meet people who have got know-how on the topic, on the subject under investigation. But you see, validating and ensuring that this information is scientifically collected is another matter. Therefore, you have to comply with the correct research methods. Next slide. And focus groups, and there are dedicated slides on this one as one of the research methods that will be an example for today. A focus group is a preliminary research technique to explore people's ideas and attitudes. It is often used to test new approaches and discover customer concerns. A group of 6 to 20 people meet in a conference room setting with a trained moderator. The room usually contains a one-way mirror for viewing, as well as audio and video equipment. The moderator leads the group. This is where you facilitate the process of data gathering. You have got an interview schedule with you. You will see later on when we'll specifically zoom here. It will tell you everything that has to do with focus groups. But you've got an interview guide with topics that are to be discussed, that assist you to ask questions to participating interviewees. To people that are there, they are a group that you facilitate and they give you information that you capture. Focus groups can be conducted within a couple of weeks and cost several thousand rands. Their disadvantage is that the sample is small and may not be representative of the population in general. But this is a fastest way of collecting data, because you don't have to have too many focus groups. 4 focus groups or 3 can assist you to collect data and finalize your report. Then the other one is personal interviews. These are a way of getting in-depth and comprehensive information. That is where you meet people. You have got questions that you want to ask to them. You either have this as quantitative or qualitative, but you sit with a person and you engage a person. Personal interviews are very expensive, because here you must see individuals wherever they are, one by one. And you do it, you have to go to them and you have to have time to see them. And it takes time. So if you're working, you have to take leave. If you're studying, you have to take study leave. If you don't have, you're using vehicle, you have to pay petrol and go and be there in order to collect this data. Typically, an interview will ask questions from a written questionnaire and record the answers verbatim. But you also, if you are doing in-depth interviews, you don't write this verbatim. You can have an interview guide and people will respond. This will be open-ended. Then you can record them as provided by the respondents. Sometimes the questionnaire is simply a list of topics that the researcher wants to discuss with an industry expert, but you also can prepare an interview guide. That is where I say here, refer to an interview guide. There's a difference between an interview guide and the questionnaire. We'll discuss this sometimes when we talk about these instruments later in the forthcoming sessions. Personal interviews are generally used only when subjects are not likely to respond to other survey methods. But I used them in the first research project, and the title was The Role of Venticulture in Nature Conservation. And I didn't use them because I thought that people would not respond. No, I didn't do that one. And I didn't think of any other challenge that is there. It was the only available way of collecting data, because by then I was still new in research and still inexperienced. But I think I learned a lot and succeeded in collecting data and produced a report. It is available. Next slide. Another way is the telephone surveys. These are the fastest method of gathering data, but they are very expensive because you have to call each of the respondents. The interview follows a prepared script that is essentially the same as the written questionnaire. It's correct. And however, unlike a small survey, the telephone survey allows the opportunity for some opinion probing. When a person is responding to you and the answer is not satisfactory, you can probe and ask further questions. Unlike if you have mailed questions to the person who writes it independently alone, because you don't see the person and you don't talk to the person. Telephone surveys generally last less than 10 minutes. They're not long. The cost and time factors involved in telephone interviews is considerably high. Next slide. The other one is mail surveys, which are cost-effective methods of gathering information. They are ideal for large sample size or when the sample comes from a wide geographic area, because you cannot call everybody. If you have got 500 people, you cannot call 500. You cannot make 500 telephone calls. It will be too expensive and it will be very labor intensive. The cost, they cost a little less than telephone interviews, but they take more than twice as long to complete. Because there is no interviewer present, there is no possible of interview bias. It is correct. But you see, there is a challenge whether what you have mailed back comes back. There is a certain percentage that is suggested to be coming from the respondents. In other words, everything that you email back, you will not get back. You will get some you will not get some, because some people will not respond and you're not there to encourage them. So this is one of the challenges that will be there. Next
Dr.
slide.
Korombi, there's a question from Murungwa.
Yes, Mrungwa.
He says, he or she says, what is the minimum number of participants? No, what is the minimum number for participants of face-to-face interview in a research?
I don't know. This depends on what your sample size. You need to determine a percentage of the population that you want to sample. Then it will determine on your. It will depend on your sampling design. Then you need to specify. This is the population size, and I want to sample this much, and you have to justify why you want to sample that percentage, because it is believed that your sample should be representative of the population. So it means when you are interviewing your people, you would have determined, I will interview 30 out of 100. If you think that 30% is the minimum sample that you would go, then you have to justify and indicate why. Then the minimum is determined by you, and you must read and justify what should be the minimum sample size of that population. Is that fine? Or do you want us to explore further when I come back next time? Are you happy? When we will deal with this when you do the sampling design, because there you need to understand how much of the population constitute a minimum sample. So then that you work out a percentage, you work out the numbers out of the suggested percentage, and you interview the number of those people. Can we go on now? Email and internet surveys also are clearly the most cost-effective and fastest method of distributing a survey, but the demographic profile of the internet user does not present the general population, although this is changing. You see, even here, when you are mailing things to through emails and you do internet, not everyone is going to respond, because you're not there, you're not talking to them, and you also don't have an opportunity to ask them further questions. You cannot probe, you cannot improve the data that they are giving to you. Now, I would now like to focus on focus group as an example, and this I'm going to be practical because it is one of the methods that I have used, and I will show you what I found and what I planned, what I implemented, and what the outcomes were. Now we want, I here used, I consulted this author that you are seeing there. The journal was published in 2020. Now, what is a focus group? We've already said something about it there, but for the purpose of this process, let's also look at this slide. Focus groups are an extended way of the interview method, a more specific in-depth group interview with discussions in a structured and organized way with the help of a facilitator or a moderator. The selected topics are explored. A focus group is a group interviewer on a particular topic led by a trained moderator. The goal of the focus group is to provide useful insights on topic. Next slides, please. You see, colleagues, the personality of people also determine the research methods that they use. I liked and I used the focus group method because I like engaging people and I like facilitation and I like running sessions and workshops. So it helped me and I was interested, and it also improved my facilitation skills. Now, as we continue, we hear that the participants of the focus group shall be selected individuals which are experienced or knowledgeable about specific matter and which can contribute the information on the intended topic in order to get the required data. Here, in your sampling design, if you want people that are knowledgeable about the topic, it means you must select them purposefully. And in terms of your sampling design, you're going to select a non-probability sampling design. We will talk about this in later sessions. And therefore, you purposefully select those people who you know are full of information. You only include those in your focus groups. The pre-planning and design of the discussion, as well as its environment, play an important role in conducting focus group sessions. Focus groups are a carefully planned series of discussions. I cannot finish that one. Let's go to the next slide. Now, in terms of planning, you must have a planned venue because people are meet in one venue. Then the venue for the focus group session should be accessible and convenient to all participants, and it should be decided beforehand. And everybody must know that that is the place where we're going to meet. Otherwise, you do not achieve your objective. Selecting the venue is in a central place is important, so you don't inconvenience people. People are not very far. They don't spend a lot of money because sometimes you won't even be able to pay them for participating in your research process. There should not be any disturbance or noise around the venue place. Otherwise, it will distort and distract people from concentrating, and you will not be able to collect data that you want. Here they're just discussing that the place, the venue should be semicircular. So when you are seated, it means everybody is seeing each other. When you are talking, everybody is seeing how the body language is, how people are communicating. All the participants should be informed about the date, time and venue of the focus group. This is about planning to ensure that everybody who is needed there arrives at time, at the correct place, and with the correct expectations. Refreshments can be arranged as well. If they're not there, I don't know if people will want to participate. And then the number and the size of the focus groups. There are different suggestions and references from different authors regarding the number and size of the focus group. There are mixed opinions on this. Some suggest that there are no general rules as to the optimal number of the focus group, but there's a general understanding from the others that let the minimum be 6 and the maximum be 12. And this is what I complied with when I designed and established my focus groups. Focus group numbers do not have to be too many. As you have a number of individuals in one gathering, you see, you have got people that should participate in a study brought together. Then that is why you don't have to have 20 of these groups. Otherwise, it will become very cumbersome for you to run. Some argue that 4 focus groups are sufficient, but that consideration of response saturation should be made after the 3rd focus group discussion. So you can assess if there is still information that is coming or the groups cannot generate information. Then you can decide on that number. This is how other people feel. But I have used, in my previous studies, I used 3 focus group focus groups, and the other one was in the Netherlands. The other one was in the Limpopo provincial offices of the Department of Water and Sanitation. The other one was in the Gauteng provincial office. These were the 3 focus groups that are used in collecting data. Now, how are participants selected to participate? So this is sampling design in a way, although we will still discuss sampling design in detail in future. I wanted to show you how I have selected and to motivate from the background that I have here, how you include people in the focus groups. So how did you compose each of the groups is important. Therefore, selecting participants for focus group is a very important and crucial task in order to make it a representative sample. So there should be females, there should be men, there should be people from all sections or all units that are affected and that you think have got information, and they can assist to provide data that you need to collect. Therefore, the demographic factor should be considered. But in my case, when I collected data, I struggled with the Netherlands focus group because the research topic was the catchment management agencies in South Africa. And I was investigating the organizational design of these institutions. Therefore, when I went to the Netherlands, the people that I could meet were the CEOs of the water authorities in the Netherlands. Catchment management agencies in South Africa are the water institutions. They are the water management institutions in South Africa. So these are the equivalent of the water authorities in the Netherlands. Therefore, in order to collect data in the Netherlands, I met with the CEOs, knowing that with the belief that they will represent the aspirations of their different organizations. So there, the CEOs, there was no female CEO. All of them were males, and therefore my groups could not be representatives of the demographics. We did not have a female there. All were males. So I collected data from males. So I could not comply with this requirement, but I could justify in the research report. You need to justify that it was not possible to bring females in because there were no female CEOs. Because my focus was, I'm going to focus and sample data and collect data from the CEOs. The formation of groups can be done by discriminating different factors like gender, age, experience, and different categories. In other words, they're saying you can go and have a session separately with females or with people of the same age or people with the same experience, or each category of responsibility. If it is at work, you can have these as small groups, but still participating in a broader focus group, because later on you will bring all of these different groups, different categories in one focus groups. So each focus group would have this discrimination, all these groups having their separate meetings and later on converging them in each of these focus groups, so that you can allow full participation of all the participants. All the focus groups should follow the same set of conditions in terms of organization, so that it will be reliable to compare the groups. You don't implement different criteria or different standards to different focus groups. All focus groups, all standards, all criteria implemented the same, so that there is no bias and there's an opportunity to compare the outcomes from all the different groups. However, it is important to find participants that have knowledge about and interest in the selected topic and who are able to contribute substantially to the discussions. Each participant should have something to say on the topic. It is also advisable that the participants generally feels comfortable. Each participant should be comfortable to speak. So in South Africa, because the catchment management agencies are water management institutions, I sampled people from the Department of Water and Sanitation, the 2 provincial offices that I've mentioned, because these are the people that manage water resources. And in the Netherlands, as I said, it was the CEOs, because they were managing those institutions. Later on, I would show you how I made sure that these groups are actually representative. Next slide. Okay. Now, I want to show you an example how I established the different focus groups, the 3 that I've done in my latest study that I conducted. And this is how the Netherlands focus group was established. It had 4 members, which were the executive CEOs of the water authorities. And the focus group was, no, please back a little bit. This focus group was representative of members of the South African Netherlands partnership that served in the Kingfisher project. All those CEOs and the people that participated were the people with whom South Africa had a project. And this project focused on water resource management and on the water institutions in South Africa. So that is why when we went to the Netherlands, we took people that are in the water authorities because they were the ones who were participating in a project with us. And here I even mentioned some of the people, such as Mr. Van Stockholm, who acted as an advisor to South Africa. So I'm showing that he was involved in the project that we had in South Africa. So this is the reason why he was also included and as part of this focus group. And there was Mr. Van Veen, who was a project manager in the Vaal water management area. The Kingfisher project members were thus part of the establishment of the CMAs in all 9 water management areas in South Africa. So the Netherlands participated in the South African process. So when we collected data, I anticipated, this is an assumption that I had, that these people would understand a little bit of what we do in South Africa, but they also have a background of how water is managed in their country. So I included them. In my criteria for including people, for sampling people in my sampling design, I included them because they would yield correct, they will provide correct information. And we've got a table that was prepared to show the gender, the organization, and the role of each of the participants so that we can show to the examiners of my research document that these people indeed were relevant and these people indeed were the ones who provided correct information. And this is what I justified in the sampling design. Now, we skip now the focus group in the Netherlands, we come to South Africa. We had 2. The first one was in Gauteng. And in the Gauteng focus group, we had 3 representatives from the Vaal Proto-CMA. This is one of the section. We had from the main account, there were 7 members in the focus group. This was another section. There was the Proto-CMA with 3, the main account with 7. These 10 officials are responsible for compliance and enforcement of regulation, regional bulk infrastructure development, water sector support services, and integrated water resource management. These are the ones that execute the core business of water resources management in South Africa and in the department and in Gauteng. And next slide, you would see that I also included people from support services. And this came from information technology support, risk management, strategic planning, monitoring and evaluation. We did not, in other words, focus on water resource managers or people that execute the core function of the department. We also included people that provide support services. In other words, from corporate services. And a table was prepared to indicate name, role, organization, and gender of each of the, of the groups in Gauteng. Sorry, this Netherlands is an error. It is from the Gauteng. So in other words, we had a table that shows the Netherlands and the table that shows the Gauteng. And in the same breath, when I established the Limpopo focus group, I followed the same criteria as in the Gauteng provincial focus group. So I justified in my sampling design how I established all these 3 focus groups. Do you want me to move to the next stage, or you want to ask questions up to so far? Because I've become practical to show what I've done. But in the focus group, we spoke about a facilitator, and here they refer to the person as a moderator. And that person is a researcher in this case, in your case, is yourselves. And he has got a role to play because this is the person that is collecting data. This person must make sure that the focus group continues and there is engagement. And that is where I said in qualitative research, he engages with the people, he engages with the focus group where data is being collected, and he has got a role. Then this is his role. He facilitates the interaction within the focus group with a set of previously planned open-ended questions. And these questions are from the interview guides. The interview guide is prepared up front. And as I've stated earlier on, the interview guides has just put topics that are to be investigated. It's not like a questionnaire that has got rigid questions that are straight, that are summary. These are open-ended. And this is what the facilitator and the moderator uses, or a researcher uses. It is very important for the moderator to plan opening remarks, question sequence, physical setting, and other materials effectively to make the focus group discussion successful. Colleagues, it is important how you introduce yourself, how you introduce the topic, and how you make your members, your participants comfortable, and how they buy into your story, and how they feel comfortable in responding, so that you can actually collect the correct data. And this is the role that you as a researcher need to play. The moderator should be a good listener with friendliness, good facilitation skills. I said myself, like social processes, like facilitation. So I enjoyed these processes, and I was given very, very good data and very good responses. Next slide. The level of moderators' participation or involvement varies at different stages of focus groups. Correct? Sometimes when you are facilitating processes, here you guard that people don't go out of the way, and they go out of context. They don't answer what you want, and therefore they are wasting your time. If you are recording, you will be recording things that do not contribute to your study. So you need to watch that they are actually responding to questions that you have answered. At the same time, you must not lead them. You must just guide them to make sure that they respond, but don't lead them. Give them room to play, give them room to talk, to express themselves so that they can enjoy the session. It can be extreme. Your intervention, your interaction with them can be extremely low. It can be low, it can be high, it can be very high. It depends on the intensity of discussion. The moderator's involvement depends also on the course of the discussion, whether it relates to or deviates from the topic or research. I've said this already. Sometimes a high involvement of a moderator can lead to biasness. You see, you lead them to answer or to respond to what you want. You must avoid this. You must be a good facilitator. Next slide, please. A low involvement of the moderator can improve the individual ability and interest of the participants, but it can also lead to groups to deviate from the topic. This is what you must you must guard against. You see, while I was attending a session with another professor from Northwest University, she was saying you don't need to interfere or to say anything if you are using focus groups. And I actually disagreed with her. I told her, what is your role as a moderator? As a facilitator, as a researcher, as a moderator, is to guard against deviation, people that go out of context. So they must stick within the topic. Hence, it is important that the moderator acts in a balanced way according to the situation. Don't be too much involved, and don't distance yourself too much. It is always good for new moderators to search some guidance from the experienced moderators. I never sought any experience because my work had involved my work as a public servant. I was a facilitator, public facilitation coordinator, and I enjoyed this, and I felt that this is what I always do, and I feel it goes along with my character. So the same applies to you. Then that is why I say the extent to which you choose a research method would go hand in hand with your attitude, your characteristics, and your interests. It is advisable that the first two sessions are conducted by a senior moderator and attended by others. Yes, if you are not confident you can do this, you can request your research supervisor to assist you. In addition, this senior moderator can attend the new moderator's first session. Now, how do you organize the focus groups? To organize the focus groups more effectively, the approximate length of the focus groups should be planned in advance. You don't have to keep people there for 4 hours if it is not necessary. The less time they spend there, they will be happy. But it must not prevent you collecting the correct data. The ideal length of focus group session fluctuates to the advice of different researchers between half an hour and 3 hours per focus group. These are suggestions. Other researchers suggest half an hour, 2.5 hours per focus group, 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours. No, you can decide, and depending on the experience, you can make a specific statement that no, 2 hours is fine for me, 3 hours, or it will depend on the interaction with the focus group. Now, after the welcoming and introduction, the group moderator should announce the topic and its vision. You see, you don't have to lay away people. You must declare what you are doing, that I am collecting research for the purpose of doing my master's. And I want to write a research report. And I focus on this and this, and this area where these people are found. So be open, and you have to do this, and you don't have to only do it here. You must do it up front before they come here and before they participate. The rules under and regulations of the discussions should be imagined and made clear to all the participants at the beginning of the session, that when we speak, we don't speak like a choir. We raise a hand, or there's a specific way in which people can speak. People should be given an opportunity, should give each other time to speak, and people should not fear to speak. Otherwise, we will leave important information. All sessions should allow the same pattern. You must implement the same, I said, the same standard to the same focus groups, to different focus groups, so that you can compare them correctly. Now, collection and data analysis of focus groups. Data collection and data analysis of focus groups happen to be very challenging tasks. The quality of the data depends on a number of factors, including whether the researcher locates enough participants, selects appropriate samples, chooses relevant questions, has a qualified moderators, or he himself is qualified, or she herself is qualified, and uses an effective analysis strategy. Colleagues, one thing that I can tell you with a qualitative paradigm is that data analysis starts immediately when you start with the process. When you start collecting data, you start analyzing data. Because these people, as a group, they're making recommendations. Some of the recommendations are valid. So already they've started to make recommendations, which should be the outcomes, which should be the data that you're going to capture in your report. So how you select participants, how you select samples, how you design your questions is also very crucial in ensuring that you have collected data which will be easy to analyze and easy to collect. The mostly used methods for data collection. Oh, I missed that one. Okay, we can continue. The mostly used methods for data collection. Oh, I cannot finish that statement. Can you read the last statement for me, Lindelo?
The methods are note-taking or recording.
Yes, I have used recordings during my focus groups. I had my 2 cell phones opened, and it was not a video thing. It was only audio. Then I recorded. In another approach, you can request one of the participants to take notes, or some participants to take notes there, or you can bring a scribe who will also take notes for you. we'll discuss about this when we zoom into other methods in future. But here I've used audio recording. While the best way to collect the focus group data is to record the complete session. Oh yes, that is what I've done. It can be audio or video recording. It was just audio. Recordings will be most useful in the latter data analysis. Yes, important, because recordings is verbatim. Then you can choose what to include. You can analyze your data better. To make sure and to avoid the last minute stress, the functioning of the camera or the recorder should be checked beforehand. This is just a warning. A tip is important due to personality rights and the participants' feelings. Well, okay, permission have to be asked. In terms of PAJA in our country, you cannot just, there is the new law, I forgot what they call it, where you're not allowed to just use my information without consent. Then you have to comply with the country's laws, and you seek consent from the participants that you can record them. Next slide, please. Oh, you? Okay. If not, all participants have given, if they did not give you permission to record, or in case of any other technical or procedural difficulty, the note-taking method should be followed as the second best solution. You see, if you have got technology, say you've got a cell phone or a recorder, it can sometimes get stuck. Even if you have got permission from the participants, you need to have a backing up strategy. And it means from time to time, one has to check if the technology is working. Therefore, you can then switch to record taking. And a good strategy is to use both notes taking and recording, or to do all audio visual and audio, so that the technologies complement each other. In such case, one research-related person should be allocated to note down the complete notes of the entire session. I've said this. For the analysis of focus group data, the qualitative summary or thematic analysis and content analysis can be used. This is data analysis methodologies that they are recommending. Can you read the last one, Dindalo?
The last one says, systematic content analysis can be done by using the lexical analysis method.
Yes, so the lexical analysis method, if you want, go to the library, then they will show you what it is and how it works. They will upload it for you again. Next slide again. Yes. Now, what is the importance of focus group in qualitative research? This method is very different from other methods in which the data can be collected individually, because they promote interaction among participants with spontaneity. Then, in other words, data is analyzed and synthesized, as opposed to collecting data from individuals, because there you don't have input of other people. If a person is lying, no one will say, no, you are lying. If somebody wants to make input on somebody's statement, no one can make if it is individual or personal interviews. In a group, there is an advantage. You can support someone's statement, you can negate it, and that on its own constitutes data analysis, and it assists you actually to come out with consolidated statements. The type and range of data gathered through the social interaction of the group are often deeper and richer than those obtained from one-to-one indeed, because you've got too many people that are thinking about statements that are made there and that make contribution, and they cement the outcome, as I've said it. They do not discriminate against people who cannot read or write. You see, colleagues with other data collecting methods, if you mail a questionnaire to a person who cannot write or who cannot read, you would not get anything. Then if you have randomly selected these people, you don't know if your people can all read. So you will even include people that cannot read. So they cannot read what you have given to them. So it is a disadvantage. But if you brought a person to a group, a person who cannot read, a person who can read, a person who cannot write, a person who can write, you bring them together, they will speak, because all of them can speak and they can make contributions and they will not be shy. Then you get information even from people who would not otherwise contribute. The focus group method also examines in detail how the group members think and feel about the topic, because you will see the body language and you would see when a person is interested on the matter, they jump up and down and they'll show you. And if they don't want the matter, they will frown, they will show you, no, we don't like this. If they don't agree with a fact, they will show you, they will shake their head. Now they are saying this is an advantage to you as a researcher. And this again educates and promotes you as a researcher. You gather more experience. A good preparation before the session helps to collect the appropriate and elaborated data related to the intended topic. Focus groups show a high possibility to explore topics widely in order to generate more information related to selective objectives and hypotheses. It is an emphasis of the benefits that we get from this one. Can you read the last statement for me, Lindelwa?
The costs are relatively low compared to other research tools.
Yes, because I just said I used only 3. It means if I were to travel, I only made 3 trips. Let me tell you that I worked in the Gauteng provincial office, and there I did not travel because that is where I'm working. I just walked to a boardroom where I seated with the colleagues there, and I've convened a meeting and I facilitated. The only place that I traveled is to the Netherlands. And how I went to the Netherlands, government and my department had paid that I undergo a study tour. And there I told them they must allow me to collect data in the Netherlands because I've got a topic of interest to the country and to my study. And I collected it very, very cheaply because they had paid for my trip. It's very expensive to travel overseas. And the other cost was only to travel to the Limpopo. And even then, it was an official trip because the topic that was under investigation was even funded by government. Therefore, it was an official trip to travel from Gauteng to Limpopo, and I didn't pay anything. And I was using official time to collect this data. So it was cost effective for me. The other thing is, it is also possible to construct a focus group in quantitative and mixed versions groups. Are considerably best used as a qualitative method of data. I only used focus groups for qualitative, not for quantitative. I did not experience the use of mixed methods because it is what they're saying here. I did not. We can explore this later. And if you have got interest, go and study how in focus group you can do triangulation. Having flexibility, richness, and different advantages in collecting data, focus group become an important method to collect the qualitative data, and that is why I appreciate the method. And here are the limitations. Every method has its own limitations. For focus groups, it is the possibility of bias and manipulation through leading or dominating participants. That is a challenge. Difficulties in distinguishing between an individual view and a group view. It is a difficult thing if you're not a good facilitator or moderator. The difficulty of generalizing the results from the small focus group to the larger population. Yes, it is a difficult thing. Now, here, you are saying somebody, Nechisalo was asking a question, the minimum of individuals to be involved in interviews. Now, here it depends on your sampling design. Now, here they are also showing that there is a difficulty of generalizing the results from the small focus group to the larger population, because we believe that the sample should be representative. If sometimes the focus group would not be representative of the sample population, sorry, of the focus population. Therefore, it will be difficult also to generalize the outcomes due to the inefficiency of ensuring that the group sample is representative. As it is difficult to have a really representative sample group, that is what it is. Please don't forget that to remind us to focus on this and to discuss more about it when we go to the sampling design. Also, the analysis and interpretation of the results are quite a difficult. Can you finish that one for me, Lindelwa?
Analysis and interpretation of the results projects are quite difficult for the researcher and therefore additional limitation of focus group.
Yes, you see now. So we're just emphasizing that this is an additional limitation. Next slide. We are concluding now and towards the end of the session. Focus group help to discover new aspects and information of one's research as the participants own and contribute together much more and more diverse perspectives on the selected topic than the researcher could imagine alone. And this you don't get if you are interviewing an individual because there is no input from others. So this is one benefit that they're telling you as part of the conclusion. Focus group have a high chance to catch and consider the people's feeling, expression, views, beliefs, and responses while collecting the data. And this is what the social researchers are interested on. And in qualitative paradigm, they think that we must be very imbued, we must be attached to the research situations, and that even the participants themselves should benefit. And this is an emphasis on that.
Therefore, focus groups are a very valuable tool for qualitative research.
Yes, and this is an overemphasize. The next slide, please. Conclusion. Focus groups can be used in a pre-structuring phase of the research to check if all possible dimensions of a topic are in the awareness of the researcher, or when a researcher wants to collect different points of view or judgments of experts. And this is the end of the focus group methods of collecting data. So I just finished and I zoomed on focus groups. Next time, I will identify one, such as survey, then deal with that one. And I think, let me pause here so that I give you an opportunity to ask questions. Since we also have run out of time, it's 19:21 now, 2.5 hours has expired. There are a few slides that I think we should not go into. We can look at them in the next session because they deal with survey research, which is quantitative. But if you've got questions, we've just looked into this. And the other feedback that I want from you, here I tried, colleagues, to also show you what I've done. If you understood that one, I want your feedback. But if you did not understand, then I will use a different way of presenting it, or I will go slower. Maybe I was too fast. Please raise any feeling and make comments, and you can pose questions if you want, because I want to propose a closure since we've come to the end of the session, and as this is the last slide, and it is our conclusion. Chair, if you can facilitate feedback so that we can close the session.
Before I ask the group for their input, may I please ask, in this focus group data collection method that you use, was it the only method that you applied in your research topic, or did you have more than one?
I had more than one. For
this particular project.
I wanted to use this one only, but my supervisor suggested that I also do in-depth interviews. So I also included in-depth interviews, and we will in-depth interviews are face-to-face, and it's one-on-one. And I will, if we get an opportunity, we will delve into them. We'll focus on them, and I will describe how I've dealt with them. Because I've used them in two methods and in two research projects. But here I also used them. And the other thing that I've done, remember, apart from this research method, there was literature review. It's also a data collection method, according to this author. I also used observations. So observations, literature, focus group, and in-depth interviews. 4. So it was triangulation, mixed methods.
Okay, thank you for that response. And then
Yes.
one last one. Would all these different data collection methods also apply for a group like the one that we currently have? Because I think here we have people who are doing postgraduate diplomas and people who are doing an honors research, what we used to call previously a research article. Would we be able to have these many methods in your project at this level? Or would this only apply when you go a level up?
I think my personal feeling is that it will be too much for them if they mix methods. Because I think they do a mini report. They do.
Yes.
They don't do a big report. Their report might just be 15 pages. How many pages are they?
I have not you. The colleagues in the audience can assist, perhaps.
But you see, while they're not raising hands, I can tell you that if they want to grow their experience and their understanding, and they want to mix, I don't think they should be stopped by anybody. They must just be advised that they must be prepared to work very hard. And if they work very hard at an honors level or post whatever level, it means they actually make their journeys shorter when they do masters. Because first time research is actually a marathon. It's a mountain to climb, because that is where you get all the confusion about research. What does research methods mean? What does triangulation mean? What does focus group mean? What is sample design? What is a proposal? All those things, people are still confused. So the less you do is better. But if you can handle them more, then you prepare your journey. You will be even more stronger.
Thank you. I do not see any hands or any comments on the chat. So I would assume there are no further questions of clarity or comments on today's presentation. And it is at this point that I would propose that we end the discussion. And
sorry, Chair, is there no one that you can ask? Can't you mention someone there? Just one statement, a little thing, if they think they understand. Just ask one of them. Do they understand? Are we moving along, or we are losing each other? So that
now they are leaving.
Are they leaving?
Yes. So
Okay.
I'll take it.
No.
That they got what they got, unless someone wants to unmute and say something. We
Yeah,
have 3 minutes to 7:30.
Yeah, good evening. I've joined late. I didn't know that the time has changed. But yeah, I think I'm struggling a bit with articles research. In the contrary, I'm used to the other research, which will be at master's level. But the articles research, reading all the articles after that, then why? Then what? I find it very confusing.
Oh.
Thank you.
Is that literature review that you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
The systematic in your research.
Okay. There is a session that will include gathering information and how to gather information and on literature review. When we get there, maybe we can see how we can assist. And as I've said earlier on, you can even call me independently, even outside the group. Even before that session, you can call me. If you wish, you can call me tomorrow. You can engage with me. We can start a discussion, and we will be preparing for that session to come.
Thank you. I will do that.
Thank you, Dr. Korombi. Take it that we all have Dr. Korombi's email address. If not, you can also email me. I've shared my email address on the chat, and then I will pass on the message to him. It's important that we have a record, and email actually helps us to keep that record to know how many students he has consulted with. So let's say email would be ideal, and then you can take it from there if you end up having a phone call or whatever other method of discussing colleagues. Thank you, colleagues, and goodbye.